Packers versus Bears. This is the NFL's oldest rivalry. It started in 1921, and over 200 games later, it still feels personal. The Packers and Bears are the two oldest franchises in NFL history. Both are cornerstone teams from the league's early days, and they've hated each other ever since. From George Halas and Curly Lambeau, to Brett Favre and Brian Urlacher, to Aaron Rodgers screaming, "I own you" at Soldier Field. This rivalry has spanned generations. The Bears dominated early, but Green Bay's decades of quarterback supremacy flipped the script, especially in the Favre and Rodgers eras, when the Packers won 40 of 58 meetings between 1992 and 2022. No matter their records, when these two play, it matters. It's not just about football, it's about pride, it's about legacy, and even with the Bears trying to rebuild and the Packers turning to Jordan Love, nothing gets the Midwest fired up like Packers versus Bears. Ravens versus Steelers, the most violent rivalry in the NFL. Ravens versus Steelers isn't about tradition or geography, it's about pain. Since the late 90s, these two AFC North bullies have built a rivalry on defense, disrespect, and downright brutality. The 2000s turned it into must-watch TV. You had Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, and Terrell Suggs going head-to-head with Troy Polamalu, James Harrison, and Hines Ward. Every play felt like a car crash. Every hit could end a season. They've met multiple times in the playoffs, and each was an absolute slugfest. One-possession games, brawls, trash talk. The respect is real, but so is the hatred. These teams are mirror images. Smash-mouth football, elite defenses, passionate fan bases. And it doesn't matter who's under center, whether it was Roethlisberger versus Flacco or Lamar versus Pickett. When these teams line up, you know you're in for war. This is the grittiest, meanest rivalry the NFL has. Cowboys versus Eagles. This one's personal. Cowboys versus Eagles isn't just a divisional clash. It's a culture war. Dallas calls itself America's team. Flashy. Philadelphia, blue collar, gritty. And they hate that slogan with a passion. These fan bases are oil and water. Cowboys fans roll deep, even into Philly. And Eagles fans greet them with batteries, snowballs, and verbal warfare. Literally. Cowboys fans have gotten jumped in the parking lot. On the field, it's had everything. Roger Staubach versus Ron Jaworski. Tony Romo versus Donovan McNabb. The Cowboys putting up 51 on the Eagles in 2022. They've traded division titles, ruined each other's playoff hopes, and never, ever missed a chance to throw shade. Even when they're both bad, the hate stays high. But when they're both good, it becomes must-see chaos. By the way, I'm going to be posting a lot here, so it would mean a lot if you subscribed and dropped a like for the algorithm. Cowboys versus 49ers. This is the rivalry that made the NFC. Cowboys versus 49ers isn't about geography, it's about dominance. Two dynasties that collided again and again. In the 1970s, the Cowboys knocked the Niners out of the playoffs back-to-back years. Then, the Niners got their revenge in 1995. In the 90s, they traded NFC championships like heavyweight boxers. Aikman versus Young. Emmett versus Ricky Watters. Irvin versus Jerry Rice. Each game felt like the real Super Bowl. And recently, they've picked up right where they left off. They've met twice in the last 3 postseasons, and the 49ers won both. As of 2025, the all-time series is tied 21-19, Niners lead. This rivalry is about pride. It's two fan bases that think they should be the face of the NFC, Raiders versus Chiefs. This isn't just a rivalry, it's war. Raiders versus Chiefs might be the most hostile rivalry the NFL has ever seen. It started in the old AFL, and from the very beginning, these teams hated each other. In the 1969 AFL Championship, Kansas City beat Oakland to go to the Super Bowl. Raiders owner Al Davis never forgot it. And after the merger, the tension didn't cool down. It got nuclear. From bench-clearing brawls to personal fouls that looked more like criminal charges, these games were violent. And the fans? Let's just say if you're wearing the wrong jersey at Arrowhead or the Coliseum, good luck. Kansas City currently leads the all-time series 75-55-2, and in the last few years, it hasn't even been close. Since Patrick Mahomes took over, the Chiefs have dominated the rivalry. But despite the scoreboard, the hatred never left. The Raiders still view the Chiefs as the enemy. And Chiefs fans, they live to humiliate Las Vegas. Giants versus Eagles. This rivalry is pure NFC East chaos. The New York Giants and Philadelphia Eagles have been beating each other up since 1933, and while the Giants dominated early, the Eagles flipped the script in the modern era. As of June 2025, the Eagles lead the all-time series 96-89, including the playoffs. And lately, it's been all Philly. Since 2014, the Eagles are 17-4 against the Giants. Philly fans love to remind Giants fans about it, and they're ruthless. But the Giants have had their moments too. They ruined the Eagles' playoff hopes in 2006. And in 2010, they were on the wrong side of the miracle at the New Meadowlands, when Deshaun Jackson walked it off with a punt return touchdown that lives in highlight reels forever. Every time they meet, it's a war of attrition between two teams that cannot stand each other, with fan bases that treat a win like a Super Bowl. Jets versus Patriots. This one's personal, especially if you're a Jets fan. The Jets and Patriots have been division rivals since the 1960s. But this rivalry escalated into full-blown hostility during the Tom Brady-Bill Belichick era, and it started with betrayal. In 2000, Bill Belichick resigned as Jets head coach after just one day and took the Patriots job instead. Since then, New England has absolutely dominated. The Patriots lead the all-time series 75-56. In fact, the Jets literally went 7 years without beating New England, finally breaking the streak in 2023. But there's more fuel to this fire. In 2007, the Patriots were caught videotaping Jets' defensive signals in the infamous Spygate scandal. Then, in 2010, Rex Ryan and Mark Sanchez stunned the Patriots in the playoffs, upsetting the 14-2 Pats in Foxborough. But the Pats got their revenge, and even without Brady, New England still owns this rivalry. But Jets fans haven't forgotten the pain. Packers versus Vikings. This is one of the most intense rivalries in the NFC North, and it's never been about just football. Packers versus Vikings is a battle of borders and of Midwest bragging rights that spans over 60 years. The Packers lead the all-time series 66-60, but the margin is shrinking. The Vikings have been much more competitive in the last decade, thanks to young superstar Justin Jefferson. It's a clash of styles. The tradition-heavy Packers versus the chaotic yet fiercely loyal fan base of the Vikings. But it's not just about the fans, it's about stolen quarterbacks. In 2009, Brett Favre, the Packers legend, joined the Vikings and torched Green Bay at Lambeau Field. It felt like betrayal. But for Vikings fans, it was one of the greatest moments in team history. In 2020, Dalvin Cook ran wild on the Packers for 226 total yards and 4 touchdowns. In 2022, Justin Jefferson humiliated the Packers' defense with 184 receiving yards in Week 1. But despite the Vikings' highlights, the Packers still hold the edge, especially with Jordan Love's rise in 2024. This rivalry is loud, close, and always personal. 49ers versus Seahawks. This isn't just a rivalry. It's a war that peaked in the 2010s and hasn't cooled off since. The 49ers versus Seahawks rivalry didn't start hot. It took off when Jim Harbaugh and Pete Carroll brought their college beef from Stanford versus USC straight to the NFL. From 2011 to 2014, it was the most physical, emotional, and high-stakes feud in football. The Seahawks' Legion of Boom versus the 49ers' front seven. Colin Kaepernick versus Russell Wilson. Frank Gore versus Marshawn Lynch. And it all exploded in the 2013 NFC Championship game. Kaepernick launched a pass to Crabtree in the end zone, and Richard Sherman tipped it, sealing the Seahawks Super Bowl trip and delivering the now iconic post-game rant. "I'm the best corner in the game. When you try me with a sorry receiver like Crabtree, that's the result you're gonna get." The Seahawks lead the all-time series 31-23, but lately, San Francisco's taken over. Brock Purdy and Deebo Samuel lit up the Seahawks in the 2022 wildcard round, winning 41-23. Steelers versus Browns. This is the AFC's oldest rivalry, and one of its most lopsided. The Pittsburgh Steelers and Cleveland Browns have been going at it since 1950, back when leather helmets were still around, and the Browns were dominating the league. In the early days, Cleveland owned Pittsburgh, winning the first 16 matchups straight. But then, the tide turned. Since the 1970s, it's been a Steelers stronghold, and it hasn't let up. Pittsburgh leads the all-time series 82-64. But don't let the record fool you. The hate is real. There's been brawls, ejections, and blood spilled on both sides. Nothing proves it more than Myles Garrett swinging a helmet at Mason Rudolph in 2019, one of the ugliest moments in NFL history. It sparked suspensions, fines, and full-on chaos. This isn't just a division game. It's factory town violence between two cities that live for football. Bears versus Vikings. This one doesn't get as much attention as Packers versus Bears, but don't be fooled. It started in 1961 when the Vikings joined the league and instantly beat the Bears in their first ever game. That set the tone. Over the years, it's been a back-and-forth tug of war. Minnesota leads the all-time series 68-58. The thing is, this rivalry is less about championships and more about who can deliver the colder punch in a frozen December slugfest. There's no real playoff history between them, but that doesn't mean there's no bad blood. From 2000 to 2010, they split the series 11-11 with wild finishes, late-game heroics, and some of the nastiest weather in football. And recently, the Vikings have had the upper hand, winning 6 of the last 8 matchups and looking like the more stable franchise on the field. But make no mistake, the Bears don't forget. This is about division pride, about being the toughest team in the NFC North. Falcons versus Saints. Forget trophies, forget respect. Falcons versus Saints is about pure petty hatred, and it runs deep. This rivalry kicked off in 1967, when both teams were still expansion afterthoughts, but it didn't take long for fans to pick a side and never forgive the other. It's not a flashy matchup to outsiders, but to Atlanta and New Orleans, it's war. The games are always weird, personal, emotional, and usually high-scoring. They've combined for multiple 40-plus point shootouts, blown leads, and heartbreaking finishes. The all-time series, 56-56. It doesn't get tighter than that. The most infamous game? Probably 2012, when the Falcons entered 8-0, and the 3-5 Saints handed them their first loss, and then talk trash like they just won the Super Bowl. This rivalry doesn't need playoff stakes, though they did meet in 1991, a Falcons win. Saints fans call the Falcons chokers. Falcons fans call the Saints arrogant. Both think the other city doesn't deserve football. Commanders versus Cowboys. Before the Commanders were the Commanders, this was Cowboys versus Redskins. It all began in 1960, when Cowboys owner Clint Murchison tried to start a team, but needed a league approval from one last vote. That vote? George Preston Marshall, owner of Washington's team at the time. He said no, until Murchison bought the rights to the team's fight song, then used it as leverage to force Marshall into agreeing. So yeah, the rivalry started with a business shakedown over a marching band song, and it only got petty from there. Throughout the 70s and 80s, Washington and Dallas were both powerhouses, combining for 8 Super Bowl appearances and 5 wins from 1971 to 1991. The battles were vicious, the crowds were hostile, and the games were season deciders. In 1983, they met in the NFC Championship. Washington won 31-17. In 1992, Dallas returned the favor, blowing past them to start their dynasty. The all-time record? Dallas leads 79-49. Dolphins versus Jets. At first glance, this doesn't look like a rivalry. Miami and New York don't share borders. They don't have deep historical hatred, and yet this feud has been quietly spiteful for over 50 years. It began in the old AFL, when both teams were still trying to build identities. Then came Joe Namath, Broadway Joe, who gave New York swagger, and Don Shula, who gave Miami excellence. In the 80s and 90s, this matchup became must-watch TV. Why? Because the games were almost always close, and the trash talk was elite. But nothing tops Monday Night 2000. The Dolphins were up 30-7 going into the fourth quarter, and then the Jets pulled off the unthinkable. Vinny Testaverde led 4 touchdown drives in the final quarter, plus a game-tying field goal. They won 40-37 in overtime, in a game now known as the Monday Night Miracle. And in 2008, Brett Favre left the Packers to join the Jets, just in time to face the Dolphins and his successor, Chad Pennington, who had just been cut by the Jets. Pennington got his revenge. Miami beat the Jets in Week 17 and won the division. It's not the loudest rivalry, but it's a rivalry nonetheless. Lions versus Packers. The Detroit Lions and Green Bay Packers have been trading blows since 1930. That's nearly a century of history, and it's been mostly one-sided. The Packers have dominated this matchup for decades. Detroit has been their punching bag. But don't get it twisted. The rivalry is real. Why? Because these games matter to the identity of both franchises. Detroit sees Green Bay as the golden child, the team with all the trophies, the legends, the respect. Meanwhile, Green Bay sees Detroit as that little sibling who keeps coming back no matter how many times they get knocked down. Thanksgiving games, Lambeau blowouts, heartbreak in Week 17, they've had it all. But the Lions finally started fighting back. In 2015, they ended a 24-year losing streak at Lambeau Field. In 2022, they spoiled Aaron Rodgers' final game as a Packer, eliminating Green Bay from playoff contention in the last week of the season. Detroit isn't scared anymore. They're contenders. And every time they face Green Bay now, they play like they've got decades of pain to avenge. Chargers versus Raiders. Few rivalries have the chaos, bitterness, and petty energy of the Chargers versus Raiders. And it spans 4 cities. LA, Oakland, Vegas, and San Diego all got a piece of it. It all started back in the AFL days, where these two teams were constant thorns in each other's cleats. But once the leagues merged, things got even nastier. From Al Davis feuds to helmet-swinging brawls, the Chargers and Raiders never needed much to ignite a war. There have been games where players were ejected before halftime, fans fought in the stands before the national anthem finished. Entire playoff hopes came down to one wild overtime game. You remember it. Week 18, 2021 season. If they tied, both teams would make the playoffs. But the Raiders said screw that, kicked the game winner in overtime, and eliminated the Chargers. Savage. What makes this rivalry extra spicy is the proximity. They both shared SoCal fan bases, and the Raiders, even while in Oakland, always had a massive presence in Los Angeles. Patriots versus Bills. This rivalry used to be one-sided. Actually, no. It used to be humiliating. From 2001 to 2019, the New England Patriots owned the Buffalo Bills. Tom Brady went 32-3 against them. He beat them with backups. He beat them in snowstorms. For almost 2 decades, it felt like the Patriots were playing Madden on rookie difficulty. But then came the shift. Brady left, Allen arrived, and suddenly, the AFC East had a new sheriff. Josh Allen didn't just break the curse, he torched it. From hurdle highlights to playoff blowouts, Allen turned Foxborough into his second home. Remember the 2021 wildcard game? Bills scored on every single drive. No punts, no turnovers. Just straight-up domination, 47-17. It was a revenge movie, and Buffalo was the star. Since then, the rivalry has tightened. The all-time series stands. Patriots lead, 79-51. Buffalo might finally be building their own dynasty. And if they are, there's no sweeter place to start than by stomping the team that stomped them for 20 years. Bengals versus Chiefs. This isn't a classic rivalry built on decades of bad blood. It's new, it's spiteful, and it's already legendary. Joe Burrow versus Patrick Mahomes. Burrowhead, AFC championships, trash talk, late hits, and revenge. It's got everything. The fire ignited in 2021 when the Bengals shocked the world and took down Kansas City twice. Once in the regular season, and then again in the AFC championship game, erasing an 18-point deficit. Cincinnati planted their flag. Burrow had never lost to Mahomes, and the Bengals started calling Arrowhead Burrowhead. The Chiefs didn't take it lightly. In 2022, Mahomes, playing on one ankle, threw darts, scrambled, and sealed a 23-20 win in the AFC title game. It was pure football theater. And Travis Kelce's post-game mic drop? You gotta fight for your right. Burrowhead my ass. That went viral. By 2025, the back and forth has only intensified. Mahomes and Burrow are the modern-day Brady and Manning. They're both in their prime. This isn't just a rivalry, it's the future of the league. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot here, so it would mean a lot if you subscribed. Thanks for watching.